Hey, this is Robert Hocking from the Big Blue Button team. We recently hosted our very first global conference where, over 4 days, we welcomed a range of speakers and discussions focused on the world of virtual learning and all things Big Blue Button, the world's classroom. The video I'm about to share is a more in-depth discussion with one of our panelists, Emma Gerch. Emma is a digital learning specialist with School on Wheels, an organization based in Southern California, where, in that region, they have more than 160,000 homeless children. You'll hear more about what life is like for homeless children trying to maintain their education, how School on Wheels is helping them, the role technology plays as part of the strategy, and we'll end with some amazing success stories from the great work Emma and the team at School on Wheels is accomplishing. We hope you enjoy the interview, and please follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Hi there and welcome. I'd like to introduce our fantastic interviewee today, Emma Gerch, who is a digital learning specialist with School on Wheels based in Southern California. We met Emma recently at the Big Blue Button World Conference. Emma was kind enough to participate in a panel discussion, and her organization is so extraordinary that we felt we wanted to talk to her in a bit more detail about it. So I'll tell you a little bit about School on Wheels, and please, Emma, chip in if I miss anything here. But School on Wheels provides free tutoring and mentoring to children from kindergarten through to 12th grade who are effectively homeless. So they will live in shelters, motels, they'll live in vehicles, group foster homes, or on the streets of Southern California. To put that in perspective, there's almost 165,000 children that are homeless. The average age of those kids is 8. And that represents about 1 in 20 children in Southern California that are homeless. And unfortunately, families are the fastest growing homeless segment in that area. So the idea of a group of people like Emma and her colleagues that go out there and make sure that those kids have access to good mentoring and education, is just really powerful. And of course, you can imagine that the role of technology in that environment must be a pretty important one. So I just want to say thank you again. Welcome, Emma, and it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So can we start? Tell us a little bit about your background and what got you involved in School on Wheels.
Yeah, so my background is in nonprofit. It's a nonprofit administration. For School on Wheels, I was working in development and marketing, and I came to School on Wheels wanting to work more directly with kids and families, and also do more program development and management and kind of tracking outcomes and that sort of thing. So that's what brought me to School on Wheels. I also have kind of a background in like film production, so always been sort of a techie person. So the digital learning role has kind of been a perfect intersection of my interests.
So, I'm the father of three daughters, and I can tell you that when COVID came and they suddenly left the classroom, it was a insane shock for us. And just as a sidebar, they're now on summer holidays, and so the pain continues. But joking aside, I think that if you're a parent or you're a teacher, the idea of having your kids learning from home is just a challenging one for sure.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
I would think that it has no comparison to kids that are living under the conditions as the ones that School on Wheels deals with. So I'm wondering, it just take us into their world for a moment. Like, explain to us what is that environment like? What are some of the challenges they face? And then we'll talk a bit about technology. Tell us what a week in the life of a child like this is.
Mhm. Yeah, well, School on Wheels works with thousands of youth every year. We've served between 2 and 3 thousand students for the past couple years each year. And really, their experiences, though they all have something in common, in that they are in temporary or unstable housing situations, their experiences are as diverse as any sample of, a couple thousand, 2 or 3 thousand students. And so our students mostly live in a few different categories. So shelters, motels and hotels. We have some students living in vehicles, and then we have some youth, usually teens, that live in group foster homes, so large facilities for foster youth that are usually older youth. And we see a wide range of experiences across and within those different categories. Some shelters we work with, look like houses from the outside, and each family kind of has their own unit. Some shelters, such as one I was at this morning in downtown LA, are very large, kind of more industrial kind of facilities with like big hallways that don't feel very homey. So there's really a wide range of experiences, but typically some of the challenges our students face really have to do with just kind of the stress of having an uncertain housing situation. So all of the shelters and organizations we're working with have usually some kind of time limit on how long families can stay there. A lot of times, families have bounced around between different shelters depending on the time limit. And so, that's very stressful for a child, not being sure where you're going to be living in the next week or month or year. Having to move schools frequently not only is stressful for kids emotionally and socially, but also causes a lot of learning loss. The statistic we see is students lose between 3 and 6 months of learning every time they move schools, which, as you might imagine, with a family living from shelter to shelter, that's going to happen frequently if families are moving from city to city or even county to county. Um, Beyond that, also just our kids are not likely to have their own room, privacy, which obviously makes virtual learning very difficult when there's a lot of noise in the background and a lot of distractions. Our parents are spread very thin, trying to figure out employment and housing and other, survival things for their families, which makes supporting students in their education very difficult for families. So that's just kind of a wide sample of some of the common challenges we might see with the families we work with.
How do you, out of curiosity, I mean, the numbers are massive, and you're talking about 2,000 children that you deal with on an annual basis. So, how do these kids get selected?
Yeah, so we partner with over 400 shelters and other organizations throughout Southern California. And we rely on those partners to refer students to us. So it might be, staff at a shelter where a family is living. We also partner with a large number of school districts. So every school district is required to have what's called a McKinney-Vento liaison, who deals with homeless and foster youth services. So we partner with a lot of those school district staff people who refer students to us. But we're really just constantly doing outreach to any organization, any agency that is working with families and youth experiencing homelessness to identify those students for our program.
I would imagine that for certain students, I mean, it must be a lifeline to have that sense of normalcy.
Mhm.
Because of course, there's that period in your life where education is the central thing that you do every day. For most kids, and as you say, they live in such unstable environments. That educational thread must be so important for so many
Mhm.
kids. How is it possible, though, for them to, stay on top of the curriculum and to progress? Is it really about, in fact, helping them tread water, or is it possible for a child in these circumstances to actually do well and progress?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's possible for any child, regardless of their circumstances, to excel and succeed academically. I think what it takes for, again, any child, regardless of circumstances, is caring adults. So that is a really big component of our program is our tutors, who really are also mentors, first and foremost, meet with students for a minimum of 1 hour once per week. And though it's really not a huge amount of time for our volunteer tutors, it really is super impactful for youth just to have that consistency of someone that's showing up, even now that we're all online, just showing up in any sort of space consistently week after week, and knowing that someone is there to believe in them and support them and encourage them, and stay on top of that schoolwork and whatever it is that they need help with. So
Hmm.
that's really the angle that we come from with our model.
Right. And so, what role does technology play in facilitating or supporting these scenarios?
hmm Well, it's interesting talking about it because, as with any agency, where it's pre-COVID and then during COVID and post-COVID, everything's looking very differently. But pre-COVID, we really had been making a big effort to incorporate technology more and more into our tutoring. So pre-COVID, most of what we were doing was in-person tutoring throughout the counties I work in Southern California, and part of that was we had 10 to 15 what we call digital learning centers, where we would bring in a charging cart with Chromebooks, and we would have digital programs such as encoding, typing, and other academic subjects that we would have students use in a structured way
Mhm.
during group tutoring sessions. We also had what was then small online tutoring program, which I was actually originally hired to manage, to reach more students in areas where we didn't have the in-person capacity. So we were already doing some online tutoring using BigBlueButton, actually, throughout some of our regions, and then some newer regions where we didn't have the in-person capacity. So the fact that we had some of those structures built out in terms of distributing devices to different locations and having some sort of structure with online tutoring really helped a lot when we had to transition fully online during COVID. So basically, we just replicated and expanded how we were using technology and online tutoring already throughout all several thousand students and several hundred partners that we are working with. So super critical, even pre-COVID, and then especially during COVID.
Now, so I understand, is it super critical because they can't get consistently to normal classroom, and so that this is the classroom, or what is it that why is it such a central part of the process?
Yeah. So our students, for the most part, we have worked with students at times that are not enrolled in school, but the vast majority are enrolled in school and going to school regularly. Part of what I mentioned before in terms of the McKinney-Vento liaison, another part of the McKinney-Vento Act is that students experiencing homelessness get expedited enrollment in school and get more preference in terms of what school they go to keep students at the same school consistently. But technology is important just because our students are not likely to have access to their own devices and to kind of meaningful interaction with technology.
Mm.
So the research shows that lower income students are less likely to have access to technology, of course, but also less likely to have access to meaningful technology education. So they're less likely to be using technology in a productive educational way, as opposed to, being on social media or playing games, which have some value as well. But kind of our aim, even pre-COVID, was to provide spaces where our kids are getting access to technology and using it in a constructive educational way, and making sure they have that exposure that they're not as likely to get due to their circumstances.
It's as part of this series, I interviewed Scott McLeod, who was our keynote speaker on the first day. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is a professor at the University of Colorado, Denver, and his specialization is technology and leadership, and his whole focus is on progressing in a more profound way the role of technology in education.
Mhm.
And one of the other people we interviewed as well was Catherine Welby, who is a professor at Merrimack College in New England. And she was a special education teacher for 15 years and then went into academia. And what's interesting is that she ended up writing a book in this period because she went and discovered that children with special educational needs actually in many cases have done exceptionally well through virtual learning.
Mhm.
You know, every child is different, but if they've got issues with hearing or anxiety, not having to be in the classroom, being able to communicate, has been really powerful. And she was amazed. She had 250 people participate and provide insight on the kind of tips and tools for helping kids with learning difficulties more effectively achieve success through technology. And Scott, is talking about the fact that, this is not simply an interface. And, I was observing the fact that a lot of parents are anxious about not having their kids glued to a screen. But he's saying it's not the screen, it's actually the tool, the ability. If you not approach this as an analog problem, if you think about the full power of technology to be a studio, to allow children to self-learn, to enable them to explore the world around them, it becomes a very powerful tool. And I
Mhm.
just think for these children who are in effect mobile, you know, that's the nature of homelessness, I suppose. If they had access to technology with the right programs, it could be a complete step change in the way that they are able to learn. And I'm wondering if
Mhm.
do you have programs like that? Do you come across programs like that where we're saying, you know what, in fact, let's get the technology, let's connect them to these programs, and let's watch them really progress? Like, do you have access or visibility programs like that?
Um, well, I definitely would say I agree in that the virtual learning has been, there is a silver lining in that for some students. It has been beneficial, especially, for our students that are mobile, like you said. It, at least for our tutoring, it allows us more, if a student moves or if their circumstances change, it makes it easier for them to stay connected to their tutor and to other caring people in their life, even as they're moving around. And then I also definitely agree, and like something we've seen a lot as we implement more technology is that it's not about, the screen time, it's about how you're using that screen time. And
Mm,
so, yeah, we've tried to implement in our, as we've, done more virtual learning, we've implemented more online tools, such as, for example, we've been using Freckle and other Renaissance tools, which are adaptive to students. And that has made things really streamlined, in that it kind of gives students practice activities in math and English that are adjusted to their grade level. So
mm,
that's an example of like a really powerful online, screen time tool that is productive and educational at the end of the day.
mm. So, do you have any specific examples? Because I mean, you work in it every day, so I would imagine that there would be a level of desensitivity that develops. But as somebody who's talking to you about it, it's hard to imagine that children are in this situation. Do you have success stories that you can highlight, examples you know uh, where your good work is actually really producing results?
Hmm. Yeah. So um, I'm just looking at our stories that we have, which I can definitely send some videos that we've made recently about students. Um,
If you could, that'd be great. We'll
yeah.
edit them into this video.
Yeah, definitely. I can think of one student that I matched with a tutor whose family was living in a shelter in Orange County and then moved between hotels and actually ended up moving out of state ultimately, but stayed connected with their tutor, and they continued to meet weekly or at a minimum weekly for years, for I think 3 years at this point. And that student went from, she is probably in first or second grade at this point and is reading at a third or fourth grade level. So I think that really speaks to the hard work of that tutor. And one of the videos I'm going to send is about a family that um, has lived in back and forth from shelters to motels and vehicles. And the student is working with multiple tutors multiple times a week, and has really excelled, despite spending a lot of time living in, an actual car, which is kind of incredible to see. Sometimes like logging into tutoring in a parking lot, using like McDonald's Wi-Fi, and I think the ultimate success is just seeing like these kids' perseverance despite their circumstances and despite the environment that they're in. And yeah, there's countless examples of students, again, logging in from parking lots, going to a Starbucks, having to take care of siblings while they're tutoring. And yeah, it's just incredible to see.
Incredible. There was one amazing story I heard. A friend of mine runs a business that does experiential learning, and he was invited by the Hershey School to deliver a program there. And how he got introduced was he attended a conference, and the president of the Hershey School stepped up and presented. And he said, "I'll talk to you about, the Hershey, the chocolate company, years ago had built, at the time, these large industries would build industrial towns and provide everything, the healthcare, the schools, the accommodation, etc. School still exists." And he was saying that, he said, "I want to tell you the story of the Hershey School." And he talks about a 9-year-old boy that was living in a car, and exactly the circumstances that you can relate to. And he went on to say, "I was that boy." And so, this guy went on to do a PhD and now is the president of Hershey School. So I mean, the reality is that it's not easy, but with the kind of people like yourself and your colleagues and your volunteers, it does make their outcomes, better outcomes possible. So last, I guess, question I would ask you is, what kind of support, or what kind of contribution ideally would help an organization like yours be more effective at supporting these kids?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Well, we always need more volunteers. You can apply on our website, schoolonwheels.org. Again, it's once weekly tutoring for 1 hour. We're especially have a big push right now for any volunteers that are bilingual in Spanish, because a lot of our youth are Spanish speaking and our families are Spanish speaking. Also, more donors, more connections to grants and other funding sources for any nonprofit. That is our constant drive, so we can serve more kids and also provide our other supportive services such as scholarships and school supplies, technology, other things that our kids need besides tutoring. And yeah, just those resources. There's also ways to donate in-kind supplies for folks. If donating money isn't something folks can do, we are always doing like virtual backpack drives. So that's a need as well.
Well, I just want to thank you again. I mean, first of all, I want to thank you for doing the kind of work you do. And separately, thank you for the time that you've given in this interview. I'll certainly make sure that the donate button is loud and proud when we post this. And I'll look forward to seeing those videos, because the point is that the contribution and your efforts is about leading to a positive outcome. So it's easy to get caught up with the negative and the distressing part of your story, but the reality is that this is all about positivity and positive outcomes. So thank you so much again, and thank you for the work you do. And we'll look forward to speaking again, hopefully soon.
Thank you so much.
My name is Mercedes Pena. I'm 13 years old. I think in the future I will be going to med school and becoming a surgeon. I really want to make a difference in the world and help save people.
With COVID going on was very difficult, getting online and how to make sure that their learning is being kept up. School on Wheels provided tutoring. They offer everything. So I knew both my girls, I knew they would benefit from it.
my tutor, Steven, he makes the lessons really fun.
So you're really good. So look at mine over to the right.
It's helped with my confidence a lot. I would just like to say thank you because I really appreciate how they take time out of their day to help all of us.
It's a complete misconception that homeless people are uneducated. I recently graduated University of Irvine. Sometimes there are just things that happen in life. You become homeless, and that's where my children and I have landed. School on Wheels is for us homeless families, and I think that's just amazing because there is a gap in their education, and that's what I'm seeing disappear thanks to School on Wheels and their tutors. It helps in more than just education. They brought her back to the little girl that I knew that was excited about learning.
So I'm Jessica and
I'm Nicholas. I am 10 years old. When I grow up, I want to be an athlete and then I want to be the president of the United States.
unfortunately the coronavirus also led him not to be in school or even any type of physical programs.
My tutor is Juan or Patty or even Millen.
They reached out and said, hey, we will provide computers and laptops. They provided us even a car charger, anything we need to make sure his foundation in learning is solid.
I can see you right now.
Yeah. I just love it. I get to learn more and I don't have to be lonely.
We are so grateful to have you in our lives.
They make learning fun again.
I feel happy. I feel happy as ever. Like this moment in my life is, I can't express it.
For everyone who's a part of School on Wheels, behind scenes, there's a thank you out there we want to give you that just doesn't exist. I feel like tears can't even explain it. It's because what you guys do is more than just giving. You guys do so much for these children. I love my son. School on Wheels provided something that I wasn't able to provide him, and you guys gave him hope when I didn't have the space to and we are just so thankful for all of it, and such a dark tunnel for giving us light.